every other year in a biennium, the Senate and the House alternate who's chair and vice chair and ranking minority member. And this session of this biennium, the Senate chairs the committee. Last session, we had our vice chairman, Representative Wassinger, chair the committee. So, and I was vice chair, and we have now switched those roles, and our ranking minority member is now Senator Letha Faust-Godot, and last session it was Representative Carmichael. So thank you everyone for attending today, and good afternoon. The first thing we want to do is seek approval of January 5th, 2022 minutes. They have been distributed to committee members. Are there any suggested changes or edits to the minutes? Seeing none, then do we have a motion regarding the minutes? Senator McGinn. And a second from Representative Wassinger. Committee, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then you all have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. Committee, we then have next on our agenda the proposed rules and regulations from the State Bank Commissioners, KAR 17-11-18, regarding loans and documentation requirements. And we will have a brief from Mr. Brock Railer, staff attorney with the State Bank Commissioner's Office. Please introduce yourself and welcome to committee. And please turn on the microphone. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Warren. As stated, my name is Brock Railer. I'm a staff attorney with the Kansas Office of the State Bank Commissioner. Our agency regulates state-chartered state banks and also consumer and mortgage lenders that operate in Kansas. Today, we have before you a regulation that is promulgated under the State Banking Code. State Banking Code only applies to state-chartered banks, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to amend this regulation. The competitors to state banks do not require a title insurance or attorney written title opinion for non-purchase real estate loans. Thus, we feel that the state banks, their competitors can close faster and cheaper. Before we get into the details of this regulation, I first wanted to state that a purchase money real estate loan is one that finances or refinances the acquisition of real estate or transfer of deed. The changes that we are proposing, first, we are proposing to increase the threshold amounts. We have not amended this regulation in over 20 years. In subsection A, we are proposing that we increase the threshold that a state bank would need to retain credit information on borrowers if the loan is not considered to be adequately secured. We are proposing changing it from $100,000 to $250,000. The majority of our changes that we are proposing are in subsection B. We are going from a 3-tier to a 2-tier system. And I also want to point out that these changes do not apply to any government guaranteed loan or loan with any private insurance. For a purchase money real estate loan, for loans under $250,000, we will require a written verification of lien search. Currently, this is required for loans at the $25,000 to $50,000 level. For loans over $250,000, we are going to propose increasing the threshold to that amount, and it will require attorney written title opinions or a title insurance. Currently, this is required for all loans over $50,000. For a non-purchase money real estate loan, for loans under $250,000, we are proposing an insurance policy protecting the bank against loss, and also clarifying that an attorney written title opinion or title insurance policy would also be acceptable. The current regulation states that insurance policy is needed for all loans from $25,000 to $50,000. And just like the purchase money real estate loans, for non-purchase money real estate loans over $250,000, we are going to require an attorney written title opinion and title insurance. Well, we are proposing that at least. And the current regulation requires this for all loans over $50,000. We do expect savings and increased revenue for the state banks that we are chartering, because they will have reduced closing costs and potentially quicker closings. I also want to point out that no bank or consumer is prohibited from using title insurance or written title opinion at any lower levels. And in fact, there are instances where that would be required. It is an industry practice that title insurance must be obtained before a loan is sold in the secondary market. With that, Chairperson Warren, I will stand for any questions now or at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, committee. We will ask for questions now of our conferee, Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might just kind of on that one. What do you propose about finding the history of the property for all these banks and any kind of excess loans? I have to ask you because I do own a title insurance company. Looks like you're trying to push the title insurance companies out of business a little bit under the 250.
Well, we did speak to some association members. I think it was Topeka Title about that requirement. And we're not really pushing out title insurance providers. We are offering the option, just like national banks, to if the situation arises, the bank wants to hold the loan for the duration of the loan, they're not required to obtain title insurance. If they want to sell it on the secondary market, that certainly would be required. Or if it's a government guaranteed insurance product, that would be required by federal regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, other questions? Seeing none, then go ahead. I'm sorry, Representative Wagner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I did have a question under where they have a notion, or they have a statement as to, I'm sorry, this mic sounds really weird, but the where there is no federal mandate on this, and most of our contiguous states don't have any sort of regulation on this. And I guess I'm just wondering why Kansas even has regulations if this seems to be otherwise such an unregulated. I think it's under page 2 of the, it's on one of these, section 2 on statement by the agency on is this mandated by the federal government or not. That just stuck out to me as rather odd.
We did consider completely removing the title insurance and written title opinion portion of this regulation. We were concerned with our safety and soundness aspect that that might be going a little too far. So we decided to increase the threshold, and it's really at the $250,000 level at this point. But yeah, I mean, national banks, we are unaware of any closure specifically to not getting title insurance or written title opinions.
Yeah, thank you.
Committee, other questions? Representative Wassinger.
Why the jump from 100,000 to 250,000? Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Well, again, it has been 20 years since we've amended this regulation, and we felt it would be easier, especially since we had a 3-tier system. It was very difficult for the banks to follow 3 separate programs. We wanted one straight $250,000 amount. And as for this new jump for non-purchase money real estate loans, we just felt it would just be easier for state banks to know what applies.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, other questions? Seeing none, then. Thank you. Appreciate that. We also have present via WebEx, David Herndon, State Bank Commissioner. Welcome to committee. And if you'd like to testify, please introduce yourself and welcome to committee. I don't think any testimony is forthcoming, but want to thank the commissioner for his attendance today and being available to answer any questions. Thank you again for that. We will then move to proposed rules and regulations from the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Division of Animal Health regarding KAR 9-2-36, official calf hood vaccination tag fees. Please introduce yourself. We have Maggie Breakville, staff attorney. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and welcome to committee.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Maggie Brakeville, and I am a staff attorney with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. If it is permissible to the chair, I would like to just go ahead and do both of ours at the same time, both of our regulations, the calf food vaccination as well as the dairy lab fee. So the first regulation I will be addressing today is KAR 9236 related to official calf food vaccination tags. And then the second regulation will be KRA 47804 related to dairy laboratory analysis. So KRA 9236 official cat food vaccination tag fees. This regulation is authorized by KSA 471831. The proposed regulation is a new regulation that pertains to the cost of official cat food vaccination tags. These tags are proof that cattle have been voluntarily vaccinated for brucellosis by an accredited veterinarian. The proposed regulation implements amendments that were enacted to KSA 471831 during the 2021 legislative session. During both the development of the statutory amendment and the regulation, KDA engaged with state and local government officials and various industry groups, including the Kansas Livestock Association, the Kansas Animal Health Board, the Kansas Cattlemen's Association, the Kansas Veterinary Medicine Association, Kansas Farm Bureau, and Kansas State University Research and Extension. The proposed regulation allows the Animal Health Commissioner to recoup the actual cost of each calf food vaccination tag, as well as to charge an additional 20-cent processing fee that will allow the commissioner to recoup costs associated with shipping and handling. The proposed regulation is necessary because while USDA has historically provided these tags free of charge, we have been provided notice by that agency that they will no longer provide these tags as early as 2023. And Kansas has already seen a 40% decline in the number of tags allotted to the state this year. I will stand for questions at this time.
Thank you. Committee questions. Do you know how many calf food vaccination tags are on a yearly basis sent to Kansas or used in Kansas?
Yes, ma'am. So in 2021, 175,000 heifers were vaccinated for brucellosis and received a calf food vaccination tag.
Thank you. Committee, other questions? Seeing one from Representative Wassinger.
Why exactly do they, is it like a tag that you'd give to a dog? Tag their ears? Is that how you do that?
Yes, so it is an ear tag. And so the tag is put into heifer calves that have been vaccinated for brucellosis. It is a voluntary thing that producers can do. It is not mandatory in Kansas that we vaccinate. And so it is an optional program.
Okay, so we're not requiring everyone to do this.
No, ma'am, not at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The regulation says the actual cost of each vaccination tag, in addition to the 20 cents processing fee, what's the actual cost of each official calf food vaccination tag?
Yes, ma'am. So we work with the various tag companies to get the lowest possible price for Kansas producers. And the current price on those tags is $1.41 a tag.
Thank you. Committee, other questions? Seeing none, then we will then move on to KAR 47-08.
All right. So my next regulation is KR 47804, Schedule of Fees for Non-Regulatory Laboratory Work. This regulation is authorized by KSA 65777, and the revisions are proposed because the current fee schedule in the regulation was enacted in 2002 and no longer covers costs associated with each laboratory analysis. The current regulation charges $5 and $10 for dairy laboratory analysis, and the proposed regulation would increase that to $15, $30, $50, $80, and $130 for the various types of tests. The proposed regulation also offers new laboratory analysis, which the lab did not have the capacity to complete when the current reg was enacted in 2002. The laboratory analysis in this proposed regulation are purely voluntary. While KDA conducts over 13,000 regulatory dairy laboratory analysis for dairy licensees within our agency, it has only conducted 7 non-regulatory dairy analysis in the last 2 years. And these analyses are typically done for producers who are not licensed through our dairy and feed safety program. KDA is only asking that the fees be increased to an amount that would cover the actual cost associated with each laboratory analysis that is conducted, because we want to ensure that Kansas dairy producers produce safe products, as well as covering the cost to the agency. In developing this regulation, KDA consulted with the Kansas Livestock Association, Kansas Farm Bureau, the Kansas Dairy Association, and all of KDA's dairy manufacturing plant licensees. I will stand for questions at this time.
Thank you. Before we entertain questions, wanted to take a moment to also thank for appearing possibly in the committee meeting room, Dr. Andy Hawkins, Assistant Animal Health Commissioner, who was here on behalf of the Kansas Department of Agriculture Division of Animal Health regarding KAR 9-2-36. Don't know if he's present in the committee meeting room, but there he is. So thank you for appearing today as well. And want to thank the Department of Agriculture on both of these regulations for working with other industry stakeholders as well. I think those are important conversations to have. With that then, committee, we will open it up for any questions regarding KAR-4-7-804. Representative Newland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You didn't think I wasn't going to ask any questions, right?
I had a feeling you would.
Well, with the hearing of other dairies possibly moving into the state and all, what kind of percentage do you?
Representative, could you turn your microphone on so we can all hear your question?
It is on.
It is. Okay. Make sure you speak into it so we can make sure those online can hear as well. Thank you.
I apologize for that. Thank you. With the hearing of other dairies possibly moving into the state, the increase of these tests are going to be quite numerous, I would expect. So is the new lab able to keep up with the demand, I guess I would say?
Yes, sir. I believe our lab is equipped to keep up with the tests coming in. The tests that would be covered in this particular regulation, they're simply non-regulatory tests. And so they're voluntary tests that people come to us and request. From a regulatory perspective, though, I do believe that the regulated dairies coming in, we would have the capacity to test that milk.
All right. Thank you.
Representative Wagner.
Again, not not being an ag person, I'm just. But you said last year they only did 7 analyses in the whole year, and so is it just once a year that they do this, or I'm a little confused on how rare it just had been.
Yes, sir. So we conducted over 13,000 regulatory dairy analysis. And so those are analysis that are conducted on licensed dairies in the state. We only conducted 7 non-regulatory tests, and those are voluntary tests that individual dairy producers can request from us. Our previous regulation was very narrow in what tests could be requested, and so this regulation is allowing for more tests.
Very good. Thank you.
Committee, other questions? Seeing none, then want to thank you, Ms. Brakeville, for appearing today, and want to also thank, if they are in the committee meeting room today, Sydney Orell, Dairy and Micro Supervisor, Jeff Jones, Dairy Program Manager, and Sally Flowers, Lab Director. So thank you all for joining us as well and for being present and available to answer questions. Appreciate that. We will then hear proposed rules and regulations from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And thank you all again for appearing and your testimony, Ms. Brakeville. Regarding KAR 28-17-6, fees for copies, abstracts, and searches, as well as then KAR 28-17-12, delayed certificates of birth or foreign-born certificate filing fee. With that, we have appearing via WebEx, Kay Hogg, State Registrar and Director, Bureau of Epidemiology and Public Health Informatics. Please introduce yourself and welcome to committee. We cannot hear you in the committee meeting room. You might need to unmute your microphone. We are hearing in the committee meeting room that you're unmuted as well. So
Can you hear me now?
yes, we can. Thank you.
I am so sorry. Thank you, Chairperson Warren and members of the committee. As mentioned, I am Kay Howe, and I am presenting proposed amendments to vital record fee regulations. The Office of Vital Statistics files vital events for the state of Kansas in order to fulfill the state's responsibility for civil registration. The Uniform Vital Statistics Act, which is KSA 65-2401 through 2438, and the regulations implementing those statutes, establish the processes whereby records of birth, death, stillbirth, marriages, and divorces are registered and subsequently available for issuance to eligible individuals. Throughout my presentation, you may hear me refer to the Office of Vital Statistics by its acronym OVS. Following the directive of the Executive Branch CEDO and after analysis regarding the effectiveness and sustainability of local agency data centers, KDHE migrated on-premise server systems to either a vendor-hosted cloud environment or to state contract data center facilities, which are managed by Unisys. Due to the increased cost to maintain a statewide registration system in the cloud, the OVS is proposing amendments to KAR 2817-6 and KAR 2817-12, increasing the fees associated with birth, death, stillbirth, marriage, and divorce certificates, and filing fees for delayed and foreign-born certificates. OVS is financially supported by a fee fund, and we are seeking an increase in fees to ensure financial stability for the civil registration program function. KDHE thoroughly investigated alternate hosting strategies and specifically analyzed the capability of migrating the vendor software and hardware stack to the Unisys Cloud Data Center environment. This option offered fewer failover and disaster recovery benefits and did not create the opportunity to hold the vendor accountable through the implementation of service level agreements to measure the vendor performance. Additionally, migration to the Unisys Cloud Data Center would introduce a second vendor to the accountability stream for the performance of the vendor system. Finally, the Unisys Cloud Data Center would continue to rely on KDHE technical resources to maintain technical support for the system, both the hardware and software integration, whereas the vendor managed cloud eliminated this requirement and the associated state cost. OVS utilizes a vendor proprietary software to manage the registration of vital records. This vendor also provides the cloud hosting of our registration system. Their cloud hosting services offer significant improvements for the delivery of their software services. These include improved system failover through the elimination of single hardware points of failure. Additionally, disaster recovery capabilities were enhanced with return to operation times greatly reduced. And finally, by implementing a vendor managed software as a cloud model, KDHE eliminated any confusion around responsibility for the delivery of vital event record services and was better positioned to manage vendor performance through contract service level agreements with opportunities to not only hold the vendor directly accountable for the performance, but also the availability of the system. This vendor continuously monitors for security issues and less than 2 weeks ago notified us that there were no security breaches. But they did note that requests had been sent to our system from outside the US to reset some users' passwords. Our vendor blocked these requests and we immediately notified those users so they could reset their passwords. Vital statistics data is highly sought after from those attempting identity theft and other fraudulent activities. This is just one example of the importance of having the right software and hosting solution. The Office of Vital Statistics receives 800 to 1,000 requests for certificates daily. Annually, our office files 100,000 records and issues approximately 351,000 certificates. Over 12,000 users enter data into our registration system. These users include funeral directors, physicians, coroners, attorneys, and birth clerk, to mention a few. It's critical that the most secure computer technology is used. Protecting Kansas records is of utmost importance to our office. As those who are trying to falsely obtain records become more sophisticated in their methods, our office must increase our knowledge and improve the tools that we utilize to protect these records. In addition to the registration system, OVS has an issuance system. And currently, this system is maintained by KDH IT team, and it is hosted in Unisys. We are looking at other maintenance and hosting solutions for this system. There will be expenses associated with the solution. Fees for vital records have not been increased since 2010, but the scope of our work and the technology needed to protect our work and records have increased. To ensure our financial stability, KDHE requests changes to our fees through two regulations. First, KAR 2817-12 addresses fees for filing and registering delayed and foreign-born records. We are increasing the fee from $20 to $30. This fee increase is due to the time needed to validate documentation for both delayed and foreign-born records. Foreign-born individuals are born outside the United States and have been adopted by a U.S. resident through a Kansas court. Regarding delayed births, there are times when a birth certificate is not filed at the time of birth and within the time frame required by law, which is 6 months. An example would include an individual who was not born in a hospital or a birthing center. Consequently, a birth certificate did not get filed. When the parents file their taxes, they realize that the child needs a birth certificate to obtain a Social Security number. If this request occurs after the child is 6 months old, then the parent would be required to file a delayed certificate by providing documentary evidence. Both of these processes require extensive time and effort to validate the documents provided. I am available for questions unless you would like me to continue with the other regulation.
Thank you. We will go ahead and stop now for any questions. I have a question regarding the foreign-born certificate. I see that it's newly added, at least as far as language, in 2817-12. Where else in statute or regulation with the department do we talk about foreign-born certificate? This isn't a new concept, is my point, right? The KDHE has been issuing and getting copies of foreign-born certificates in any event, not issuing them, but getting copies.
That is correct. We are looking in our statutes right now.
So with this 2817-12 allows, and statute allows for foreign-born certificates to be filed with the state of Kansas. That's current law and regulations.
Yes.
Thank you. And we have not, as a state, though, unless the proposed 2817-12 becomes enacted, we don't have a process for delayed certificate of foreign birth. No filing fee to file that. Is that correct? We don't have a filing fee at all?
Once you've had it, I'm going to move aside and let the other individual here respond. You have to introduce yourself.
I'm Jason Mathewson. I'm the director of the Office of Vital Statistics. Currently, there is a process for filing foreign-borns and delayed births. The fee to do both of those are $20, and that fee would be increased to $30 due to the verification and the background check to ensure that these individuals, one was either born in Kansas or born in a foreign country. We'd have to go through and check all the paperwork to make sure it's legitimate. So the only thing that we're doing is changing the fee.
Well, it looks like in the proposed regulation, not only increasing the fee, but adding foreign-born certificate to 2817-12. This is the first time it's being subject to a filing fee, or has that been elsewhere? I'm just curious. This is new added language to 281712. The foreign born certificate is.
To charge a fee for an actual filing of it, yes. That would be added to 281712.
And foreign born certificates are used for a child born outside the US and then adopted through a court here in Kansas or anywhere in the country.
You'd have to go through a Kansas court to be adopted.
Right, because it's being filed here. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Committee,
Thank you.
other questions? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's disconcerting to me that on both of your hearings, you're not doing anything but remote public participation. Since the mask mandate has gone down, why are we not opening up public hearings for people to come and visit with you?
I don't have an answer for you outside of the fact that I know our attorney, he is in the room.
I'm sorry, was there a hand raised? Okay, thank you. Did you want to come to the podium and answer? Oh, sure. Well, introduce yourself. I want to see, oh, yes, we do. Eugene Luger, right? Associate Chief Counsel for Public Health.
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead and introduce yourself and welcome to committee, and make sure you turn on the microphone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Eugene Leager. I'm the Associate Chief Counsel for Public Health in the Department of Health and Environment. I don't know the answer to that. I think these hearings were scheduled a month or so ago. And so I think that is the reason why at that time they were scheduled to be remote. But I specifically know the answer, but I assume that's the answer.
Yes, go ahead, Representative Wassinger.
I would really like to hear from the now confirmed secretary as to when she's going to start opening up public hearings, because I think that's important to do. And I don't understand why the KDAG is continuing to keep the public from giving their 2 cents.
Right.
Please.
I agree that at this point in time, there's no reason not to have the open hearings. So,
well, if you would get back to us, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, we will.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Senator Tyson has her hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a schedule conflict, so I'm not able to be in the room, and I appreciate your diligence. I would ask well, it may be for Jason or it may be the revisers, but when and how, by what standard did they decide to go to cloud? And I have a follow-up on that, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. That would be a question for Ms. Howe or Mr. Mathewson.
Yes, so it was a directive from our executive branch of CEDO.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The CEDO forced you to convert to cloud computing?
Go ahead, Ms. Howe.
My understanding is that, yes, that this was the directive that we were given. And the option was that you could go to vendor-hosted cloud environments, or you would go under the data center facility managed by Unisys.
When did that occur?
I'd have to get back with you on a date. I don't recall.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If they could get us the date on when the CEDO encouraged this or mandated it, and when they actually converted, because I find it somewhat contradictory that they're asking for a fee increase, and part of the increased need for the fee is the vulnerability that the department or agency has created by putting these online. I'm extremely disappointed, and just because you think you haven't been hacked doesn't mean that that data isn't vulnerable. I can't imagine why the state would force this. architect system and create the vulnerability and the cost with this type of system, Madam Chairman. And I would also ask, are there any vendors or developers that are non-US citizens, H-1B visas, or not vetted background in the system? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. If we have an answer to that question now, Ms. Howe, or is that something that needs to be followed up?
It'll be a follow-up.
Thank you. Senator McGinn.
Thank you. If my memory serves me right, if we go back, our whole CEDO, OITS, et cetera, was a mess 2 years ago. And it was always coming to us in the budget to fix that. And I do believe that that was taken over by the Department of Administration or the Secretary of Administration. And unless she's changed, but she has been the one that has been working on this for a year and a half and has been making progress. So it might not hurt one of the committees to have an update on how that process is going, because I have not heard. So I might mention that to our budget chair, but we could also have that update in here, and I think it'd be very appropriate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So requesting an update on OITS and here in this committee, and then possibly a different request in the budget committee. Other questions? Representative Wagner.
I have a question again, kind of following up on what Senator Tyson asked. I'm a little curious as to, you're switching over to this cloud system, and yet everything is more expensive. Is that all because of upfront cost, or will there be some future long-term economic benefit as far as being more efficient, either with your staff that still has to deal with this, or what? I'm a little concerned about just why the change was made, and then everything's more expensive, and then you seem to have more concerns about security. If you could elaborate.
So when we moved to the cloud, it was about the additional security that the vendor was able to provide with their hosting environment. So like different levels of encryption that they offer, backup systems.
Okay. If I could ask, how much is, you say you have a vendor and like an annual contract? I mean, how much do we pay this vendor? I mean, is that
For the hosting?
Yes. Or, I mean, for the totality of their services?
So the maintenance of the system, the contract is done in a 5-year block, and it ranges from around $355,000 up to $372,000. So there's incremental increases over the course of the year. And then on the cloud hosting, we just started with it in September of last year. And so, or excuse me, 2 years ago, 2020. And so that figure goes from $752,000 up to $776,000.
I see. And if I could, I noticed from the economic impact statement, I mean, this is like a $1.7, $1.8 million annual increase in fees. I mean, it's basically a 33% increase. The rest of the differential is what? I mean, this is not more efficient for your staff in your department to use? I mean, are there not any cost savings from using it? Or, I mean, here you've elaborated on about $1 million worth of annual fees that have gone up. Is there, I mean, again, why the 1.7 million?
So keeping in mind that just the cost of everything has went up, and we haven't had a fee increase since 2010, that is part of it. But the main piece of this is that we operate with two systems. We have the system that registers all this data, and we have the system that issues. Those are like the issuance of an actual certificate. And this system that we're talking about right now has all been about the registration system. We need to still do work on our issuance system and look at what we're going to be doing for maintenance and hosting of that system. Right now, that is done through our KDHE IT department, and it is hosted in Unisys, but we know we need to look for other options.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Committee, other questions? Seeing none, then I do have a question. Does moving to the cloud, does that mean all of the vital records for birth, death, stillbirth, marriage, divorce, or foreign-born certificates are now in the cloud?
Yes.
And you don't recall when that change was made, or do you? Or when was that change made?
We moved everything in September of 2021. We started work on it the previous year.
The legislature has been looking at creating more opportunity to prosecute those involved in identity fraud and identity theft, because we see it's sometimes not just a single person, but it's an organized group operating to commit identity theft and then identity fraud. And I think we've all seen some of that with the current unemployment system that we've had over the last 2 years and the fraudulent filing of claims. And so it's a concern to me that despite that occurring, it was in September of 2021 that the Kansas Department of Health and Environment decided to go put all these vital Kansas records on the cloud. It seems to contradict what we have been addressing in the legislature, and is a cause for concern. Is there an opportunity in the Kansas Department of Health and Environment? Is this system reviewed every so often? It's possibly something that we would hear about on the update about OITS, as we have been requested to by Senator McGinn. Is there something that the department regularly does itself, even on a yearly basis, or somewhat to make sure that it's being used properly and not being hacked, quite frankly?
The vendor has ran security checks and they do reports back to us. And that's where they identified the situation that I referred to whenever I was speaking earlier.
So the vendor who is managing this self-reports?
Yeah, it comes back to RIT and to us.
Thank you. Senator McGinn.
Again, I'd go back to, if we have time, I would bring the Secretary of Administration in here to explain all these things, because this is something in my previous role that we followed and pushed very hard for, and I think that she would be able to answer many of these questions.
Thank you. Committee, other questions? Representative Wagner.
If I could ask one final question about security. Under your old system, had you ever had any security breaches, or was that ever concerned with your prior system?
Always a concern. I mean, we're always worried and doing everything possible to ensure that we don't have any breaches. We are not aware of any that occurred in our other system.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, then. Thank you for the testimony on KAR 2817-6 and KAR 28-1712. With that, then, we will move to proposed rules and regulations from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment regarding a number of them, and we will hear then from Marilyn St. Peter, Director Health Facilities Program, KDHE BCHS. Please introduce yourself and welcome to committee.
Thank you for this opportunity to present the home health regulations. My name is Marilyn St. Peter. I am the Director of the Health Facilities Program for Acute and Continuing Care, KDHE, Bureau of Community Health Services. Assisting me today is Robin Kuhn, who's a Program Manager for Acute and Continuing Care. The current home health regulations have been in effect since 2006. The reason for updating the regulations currently is to redefine, update procedures and requirements, and/or remove outdated or incorrect provisions and/or language. In addition, these regulations further support the new supportive care services category. In Article 51, Home Health Agency Licensure, KAR 28-51-100 under definitions therefore addresses the definition of administrator and alternate administrator, who are individuals appointed by the governing body and directly responsible for the management and day-to-day operation of a home health agency and/or functions in the absence of the administrator. The definition of admission note and specific information used to develop the plan of care for the client or patient, and who is responsible for completing the admission note for home health services, supportive care services, and HCBS waiver services. The definition of parent office as the main location or site from which a home health agency operates. This removes the branch office location requirement and the requirement to be 100 miles from the parent agency. The definition of service area to mean geographic region within a 200-mile radius of a home health agency's parent office in which the home health agency is allowed to provide home health services, HCBS services, or supportive care services to clients or patients. The definition of attendant care services and attendant care worker specified in KSA 65-6201. The definition of bylaws and the operating agreement governing the home health agency's operations that is adopted by a license. The definition of change in ownership to the sale or transfer of the home health agency, including any sale or transfer of 50% or more of the stock of a corporation. The definition of the plan of care used by the home health agency to determine which home health services, supportive care services, or HCBS services will be provided to each patient or client. For example, for home health services, the plan of care will require a physician's signature and renewal every 60 days versus 62 days. KAR 28-51-100 addresses the definitions for several positions in the home health agency, such as clinical manager, director of nursing, clinical nurse specialist, dietitian, licensed practical nurse, manager, nurse practitioner, occupational therapist, and occupational therapist assistant, physical therapist and physical therapist assistant, physician, physician's assistant, registered nurse, respiratory therapist, social worker, and speech therapist. KAR 28-51-100 addresses the definitions for several processes in the home health agency, such as client record, direct supervision, discharge summary report, governing body, HCBS services, in operation, inspection, KDADS, license, nursing experience, licensee, medication administration, office hours, on-call, patient, personal care, plan of correction, progress note, setup of medications, significant health event, skilled care services, supervision, telehealth, and total unique patient and client count. KAR 28-51-101, licensing procedures. The following changes have been made based on the need to either redefine, update, and or remove outdated or incorrect provisions and or language as follows. A completed
I don't think,
initial.
I don't think we need you to read the regulation, but if you can explain any particular changes. Don't mean to interrupt, but we're running a bit short on time.
And on 2851-101, the licensing procedures, this regulation really restructures licensure for home health agencies by creating a two-tiered licensure system. And so this explains the provision of home health services and or HCBS services, or for the provision of only supportive care services. And then that it explains the following non-refundable fees based on a total unique patient count. Each home health agency will offer only the home health service, the HCBS or supportive care services that will be specified on the home health agency's initial application or renewal application. This regulation redefines and updates language addressing the notification of a change in administrator or alternate administrator, a change in location, etc., or contact information of the parent agency and or closure of a home health agency. This regulation redefines and updates language addressing change in ownership. This regulation establishes and updates procedures for service area and service area exemptions. Any licensee providing home health services may request an exemption to the licensee's service area by providing for an exemption form provided by the department, which will include required criteria. If the exemption is granted, it'll be applicable for 1 year.
Thank you, committee. We'll go ahead and stop there and for a brief moment to ask if there are any questions so far. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed that you have fees listed on here. I'd like to know what the change in fees are. I don't need to know how much higher are you going on this. And I noticed that you've gone from a very brief description of things and added quite a bit more responsibilities. So how much time do you think you're going to be adding to these organizations to complete all of these new regulations?
It really further clarifies and defines what these are, and supports the Senate Bill 154. The licensure fees for the Kansas home health agencies, again, have not been changed since, I believe, 2006. So the initial fee for the Kansas home health agencies providing skilled home health and or HCBS services will increase to $500 with a total unique patient or client count of less than 100, and $750, excuse me, for a total unique patient count of 100 or more. The renewal license fee for a Kansas home health agency providing skilled home health and or HCBS services will increase to $350.
Thank you. I was wondering what they were prior to this. Give me one example. I am trying to figure out what the percentage of increase you're charging. I don't need to know the exact ones I see where you've changed them. I don't know what the percentage is that you're going up from. Are you doubling them? Are you tripling them? I just need a simple answer on that.
May I ask for the assistance of Jean?
Absolutely. Absolutely, as far as I know.
Of course, yes.
Jean is in the audience.
Yes, go ahead and we will invite, is there anyone from KDHE in the audience? Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Leaguer, Associate Chief Counsel for Public Health with KDHE. Go ahead and introduce yourself and welcome back to committee.
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Eugene Leaguer. I'm the Associate Chief Counsel for Public Health within KDHE. I'm trying to look up to determine in our previous regulations. I know the previous regulations had a formula that was based on a initial amount and then also based on the number of clients or patients that were served within the agency. So I'm trying to think of a specific example. I would have to look at the previous chart to determine what an example would be for a home health agency.
I think we have someone that has something to add or.
Go ahead, the reviser, Ms. Moyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jenna Moyer, Reviser of Statutes Office, and I just pulled up the previous regulation. You can find it on the Secretary of State's website. It'll be KAR 2851-102. And so under the previous scheme, it would have been the initial licensure application would be $100, and then it is tiered based upon the number of visits, and it goes a range from 0 to 500 visits is $25, and then 20,000 visits would be $580, but that would just be in the previous regulation.
So this is the one from the previous regulation and they're changing it?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Would be revoked and set up in this new scheme that they explained. So it's not apples to apples, it's a slight variation of responsibilities and duties.
Okay, thank you very much for both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Some of it that I have questions about is, for instance, at section O, dietitian is being changed from being licensed by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment and now licensed, if this proposed rule and regulation goes through, would be licensed by KDADS. So is there a particular reason for that change?
Again, it's to, part of this was just to update and remove outdated or incorrect provisions of the language.
Okay, thank you. And then we have new requirements proposed in these rules and regs for the licensure of, I think it was an individual health care home, or I'm sorry, had lost my place, but again, these seem to be big changes that are they were other entities consulted with? We heard from the Department of Ag that they did, and how about KDHE? Who was consulted with these kind of changes?
These are big changes, and we did look at surrounding states that border Kansas, including their regs and their fees. And those fees are part of the economic impact statement that we attached, that we provided.
Thank you. Committee, Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A question about the benefits of the proposed rules and the justification. Had you had any sort of health or safety problems under the existing regulations? Or is this just strictly you just wanted to do it just because it had been since 2006?
A lot of it is because it's just been 2006 and so much of it needs to be redefined. And like I said, updated procedures and requirements and remove outdated or incorrect provisions or language. And also this is in effect to support the new supportive care services category. And these regulations make it much clearer and easier to follow for the provider. We also consulted with the providers. When we first started working on these, we had called in a group of providers from different areas of Kansas, and they had a lot of input in this.
All right, but as far as, but it isn't literally from a health and safety concern per se. It's just, this is just an updating.
I feel like these are necessary for the safety and the welfare of our Kansas citizens. Especially, this gives us an opportunity to regulate those supportive care services so that we can make sure that Kansans are provided care in a safe environment in their home.
Thank you. Go ahead and proceed.
I'm not sure where I left off. I apologize.
We are running a bit short on time, so just to, as best you can, if a brief overview of the regulations, and then we will open it up to committee for questions.
Again, each one of these, like I've said before, it redefines, updates, or removes outdated or incorrect provisions or language that are relevant to the home health agencies. And it works with all types, like, sorry, I'm getting very nervous. I apologize. So
It's okay.
This defines roles and responsibilities throughout the home health agency. And including like nutritional and dietary consultants. It just redefines what we are looking for when we want to make sure that providers are providing safe care to our patients and clients in Kansas, and especially with the HCBS services. And it further defines the competencies that are expected for workers, and what the provider's notes need to say, and who can do this and who can do what. And it is a large regulation, but we feel like that these are just so important to protect the safety and the welfare of our Kansas citizens. I just really am passionate about that.
Thank you, Ms. St. Peter. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So I would just say I'd be willing to help answer any questions, or if we do not have an answer to your question, to provide those answers for you.
Thank you. I'm just looking, for instance, at 2851-103 regarding the organization and administration of each home health agency. And it does put a lot of new requirements for opening, or excuse me, organizing and administering a home health agency that didn't exist before, that requiring ages of the administrator, education, be a physician. We need to find a balance, obviously, between keeping our Kansans safe who are utilizing these home health agencies, and not make it so burdensome that we don't have any home health agencies for Kansans to utilize, for Kansans who need them. There is a fact in the expense that these regulations would increase the expense of running a home health agency, I think, by $14,000 to $25,000 to $22,000 a year. So, to Representative Wagner's question, were there lots of complaints about home health agencies that led to these new regulations? Quite frankly, are they fixing a problem that we need to be aware of, or not?
There are a lot of questions from the providers as to needed to clarify organization and administration. And yes, there have been some complaints. Yes, absolutely. So we feel like these provisions will increase the quality of our care and the accountability of the care that's being provided.
Can you answer how many home health agencies are licensed right now in the state of Kansas?
I do not have that exact number. I would be glad to get them for you, but I would say there is over 150.
Over
I will get the
150.
exact- I will get the exact number for you.
So it's your testimony that the industry was asking for more regulations?
For clarifications,
And did you work with them to review these, or is this their opportunity today to review them in this public hearing?
we have asked for their input prior to these regulations being formulated.
And they have provided that or not?
Yes, they did.
I just see pages and pages and pages of new regulation here, especially given the last 2 years and nursing home facilities that have been overburdened. And again, we want to be careful that we find the right balance between operating safely and providing places for folks who need attention like this. So did we have other questions? Representative Wassinger.
I find it hard to believe that the agencies have decided that they want to restrict themselves so much and increase their fees to the amount that you're doing. I would highly recommend the Kansas Department of Health and Environment not go forward with these at this time and really go into it more and with more depth with these organizations, because I think Senator Warren is correct. You're going to choke these people. We have a hard enough time getting people to help with home health care. This looks like it's going to restrict it even more. So I would really like them to wait. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And
Thank
again,
you, Ms. St. Peter.
These were based on comparisons to border states and the fees that they were charging.
I'm not so much, I'm looking at the additional, quite frankly, the administrative procedures, the operating procedures. Again, we need to find the right balance, and this seems awfully onerous. There's been some conversation, it sounds like, between stakeholders and the department. This would be a lot to be implementing, and perhaps it deserves more study, like Representative Wassinger had suggested. Any other questions for the conferee? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I would go further and say this is heavy-handed and a prime example as to why we need the constitutional amendment on rules and regulations. I'm disappointed that it appears that nothing changed in statute and the department just went out and decided to increase the rules and regulations and to look to other states to what they're charging for their fees. That is one of the poorest business models that I could see, Madam Chairman. To me, it is what is the cost to Kansans and what do we need to cover the cost, not what are other states charging for fees and what can we get out of it. So thank you, Madam Chairman, for your comments, and thank you to the department for your testimony. I would ask that you consider pulling these rules and regs also.
Thank you, Senator Tyson. Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you all can hear me. Let me at least be a small voice of dissent. It's important that we make sure the people who are dealing with vulnerable populations, like the folks who need home health care, we need to make sure those people are kept safe. And delaying the implementation of regulations that deal with the qualifications and the suitability of home health care aides and the companies that run these agencies are vital to protecting the public safety. And I know it's easy for us in this committee to say, oh my, these are way too many regulations. It must be unduly burdensome. But delaying the implementation of regulations like these puts citizens' lives at risk. So I would be very, very reluctant for this committee to try to tell the agency to pull these regulations and leave this vulnerable population exposed to people who would prey upon them not only physically but also financially. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, other questions or comments? Seeing none, then Ms. St. Peter, does that conclude your testimony as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you then. Thank you for that testimony. And there was a lot of material to cover. I think actually we didn't get to quite a lot in the regulations from the department, including nursing services, therapy services, nutritional and dietary consultation, clinical records and client records, patients and clients' Bill of Rights, training, and other matters. Again, to Senator Tyson's point, I don't think that anything in statute has changed that would indicate that these rules and regulations would be responsive to a change in statute. Do I have that correct, Ms. St. Peter? And
Yes.
I would ask the revisor as well. I'm sorry, Ms. St. Peter, was that a yes?
Yes, and I would refer to Jean Luger for comment.
Okay, great. If he can answer that question as well. Nothing in statute, or has anything in statute changed that would sort of lead to the regulations and the rules that we have proposed from the department?
Actually, there was a change.
Go ahead and identify yourself first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eugene Leger, Associate Chief Counsel for Department of Health and Environment. There has been a statute change, and I believe it was in 2000, maybe 17. That's when the definition of supportive care services was added in. There was a point in time when the agency was trying to get agencies who were providing, routine care without absent medical care. So they were assisting elderly persons in their home with their bank statements or cooking or other items. And there was some discussion about whether or not those types of home health agencies should be licensed. And so I don't know, I believe it was 2017, that definition was added to the statute. And so that precipitated actually these regulations to be drafted. And so there needed to be a separate category because most of these regulations dealt more with the medical care. And so the supportive care services was added in. And when that was done, there needed to be an overhaul really of the language that was used throughout these regulations, updating those regulations. We had a lot of input from like the Department of Administration as to changing some of the definitions and adding definitions and some of the other requirements.
Well, I would agree it's an overhaul.
It is.
Thank you. You might want to stay at the podium. We have a question from Senator Tyson. I don't know if it's directed to you, but go ahead, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And yes, you are correct. It is directed to him. That is quite disappointing. 2017 is the legislation, and the legislation was not a complete overhaul. It was adding a definition as stated. It took 5 years, to complete the rules and regulations for one change in statute, and you're using it as an excuse for a complete overhaul. I would definitely question that. And again, I hope this is used as a prime example of why we need the statutory authority to be able to override some of these rules and regulations. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I agree with Senator Tyson there that it's good that we're working on that proposed constitutional amendment regarding rules and regulations. So with that, committee, other questions? Seeing none, then thank you for your testimony today, both Mr. Leger and Ms. St. Peter. We also had, I think, available on WebEx, Angela Jurek, RN Program Manager, Acute and Continuing Care Hospital Division, Robin Kuhn, RN Program Manager, Acute and Continuing Care Non-Hospital Division, as well as Amory Lovin, Public Health Attorney. So with that then, committee, if there are no other questions or comments on any of the rules and regulations we have heard today, are there any? Yes, Representative Wagner.
Just again to accentuate the point that the chairman and a number of the members have made, that this really, I mean, particularly home health agencies, I know people who run them, and they're not necessarily big operations, and to add a lot of administrative overhead and just additional cost and paperwork, I don't see how that's really in the public interest. If the current system has functioned well, and there has been no examples that they could really bring forward where somehow these regulations would solve the problem. So I think this is a classic example of regulatory overkill.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Seeing none then, thank you, Representative Wagner, for your comments as well. And for all those who have commented today, as well as those who have testified and been otherwise prepared for any questions. With that then, committee, if there is no other business, there is none on the agenda. Go ahead.
Jill Shelley, Legislative Research. Staff would ask for specific clarification as to the comments to be included in the report.
Thank you. I think we'll start at the end and work our way backwards. You heard the comments regarding the KDHE proposed rules and regulations in Article 51, that there were comments that this was significant overhaul without a lot of statutory, if any, direction to do so. Any direction relied upon was from a 2017 statute that was merely a change in definition, if I have that right. And there was comment that the rules and regulations demonstrate a need for the proposed constitutional amendment regarding rules and regs. Those were some of the comments as well. Regarding other regulations that we heard today, KAR 2817-6 and 2817-12 from KDHE. There were concerns that the committee was requesting updates on OITs, as well as an update from the Secretary of Administration regarding the use of the cloud to maintain and retain the vital statistics of Kansans, such as birth certificates, death, stillbirth, divorce, foreign-born certificates. Wanted some further clarification on when CETO had mandated that the documents be converted to a cloud system. And if I'm not stating the comments correctly, make sure that we have captured them all for the minutes, please. Any other committee members? And then regarding proposed rules and regs from the Kansas Department of Agriculture, KAR 4-7804, regarding the non-regulatory laboratory work. I don't think we had any particular comments. There were some questions, but correct me if I'm wrong, committee, for the minutes. And also the Department of Ag, the CAF-HUD, vaccination tag and fees. Yes, go ahead.
If I may, there was a request for, regarding whether KDHE would be holding in-person hearings. Is that for the comments?
There was. That was, yes. That was regarding the first conferee that we heard from KDHE, and then I think all of KDHE, yes. The question was, why not an appearance in person here in the committee meeting room rather than virtual on WebEx? Yes, Representative Wasser can clarify her own question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wanting them to start holding public hearings in person as opposed to just doing WebEx. They're not, And I noticed that the last person who came to testify was also probably in her home. And I'm wanting to know when people are going to be going back to work and letting the public come to public hearings. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And then the Kansas Department of Ag official cat food vaccination tag and fees. We had some questions about how many there were, but no particular comments about the proposed rules and regulations. And then the state bank commissioner rules and regs, there were some questions about why the increase from $100,000 to $250,000, and would that drive certain title loan companies out of business? I think that covers the questions and comments essentially from committee today. Committee, other comments or clarification of our discussion and comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, Representative Carmichael.
Yes, go ahead, Representative, and then Senator Tyson.
Thank you. I'll try to make this brief. I believe that Representative Wassinger did clarify that her concern was not with the appearance by WebEx at the Rules and Regs Committee, but her concern was that the public hearings are not being conducted by KDHE, with at least the in-person option. And so I think we got that clarified. Now, there was a second concern that the representative expressed some moments ago, that state employees are not at work, they're at their homes, and that's a separate concern. But I just want to make sure that we at least try to keep this WebEx option available, because it saves people sometimes from driving clear across the state for a 5 or 10 minute hearing, and that's not an efficient use of taxpayer money. The second thing, Madam Chair, is I understand that perhaps a majority of this committee thinks the KDHE regulations are a reason to adopt a constitutional amendment concerning rules and regulations and the revocation of those rules and revocations. But I hope that the minutes at least would reflect that I do not share that belief, and I do not believe these KDHE regulations are a reason to amend the Constitution. So I'd appreciate the courtesy of that, of my position somewhere being at least recorded in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Tyson. I think she no longer has her hand raised. So with that then, committee, if there are no other committee comments or discussion, want to thank committees for their time and attention during the lunch hour, and your work here today, as well as staff and others who have participated. So thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.